The person working 18-hour days in your office, they're a slave? Read that again. That person answering every Slack, grinding through weekends, wearing exhaustion like a Purple Heart. They're not winning. They're a tool being used by someone who figured out something they never will. And what's wild, that someone is probably working 4 hours a week. Machiavelli documented this 500 years ago. The prince who grinds the hardest governs the worst. But here's what nobody teaches you. There's a form of strategic inaction, so dangerous, so counterintuitive, that once you master it, you'll outmaneuver people who outwork you 10 to 1, and they'll never understand how. Because this isn't about laziness. This is about something far more brutal. Let me show you. There's a disease spreading through the modern world, and it has a name nobody dares criticize. Hustle culture. You post the 4 a.m. alarm, brag about skipping meals, tell people you slept 3 hours like it's a combat medal. And deep inside, you believe the suffering proves you deserve success. It doesn't. It proves you have no strategy. Think about it. Machiavelli wrote about a specific ruler, the one who involves himself in every minor dispute, who personally oversees every grain shipment, who makes himself indispensable to every decision. This ruler feels powerful, feels needed, feels in control. He is none of these things. He's a bottleneck, he's fragile. Remove him and the kingdom collapses, not because he held it together, because he never built it to stand without him. Now look at the other kind, the prince who appears almost idle, who delegates ruthlessly, who shows up only when the moment is decisive. People whisper, "What does he even do?" They resent his calm, mock his absence from the trenches. And then the crisis hits. While the busy ruler drowns in his own complexity, the calm one makes a single move, one calculated strike, and the entire board shifts. That's not luck, that's architecture. Machiavelli calls it the effortless state, the point where you stop asking, how can I do more, and start asking, what if the right thing was actually easy? Not because it requires no skill, but because you removed every obstacle between you and the precise action that matters. Most people are addicted to effort because effort feels like progress. It triggers the same reward centers as actual achievement. Your brain cannot tell the difference between being productive and feeling productive, so you stay busy, you stay exhausted, you stay poor. The person above you, the one making 3 decisions a week while you make 300, they understood something you're about to learn. Effort is noise, precision is power. 216 BC, the Roman Republic is bleeding. Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general, just annihilated Rome's legions at the Battle of Cannae. 70,000 Roman soldiers dead in a single afternoon. The greatest military disaster Rome had ever suffered. The Senate is hysterical. Generals demanding counterattack. The people want revenge. Blood for blood. Pride demands it. And into this chaos walks one man who proposes the most insulting strategy imaginable. Do nothing. His name was Quintus Fabius Maximus, and his plan was simple. Don't fight Hannibal, don't engage him, don't give him the pitched battle he's designed to win. Instead, follow him, shadow him, cut his supply lines, burn the crops he would forage, harass his flanks with small raids, and wait. Rome hated him for it. They called him cunctator, the delayer. It was meant as an insult. Senators accused him of cowardice. Soldiers questioned his manhood. The public mocked him in the streets. Every instinct in the Roman psyche screamed for action, for confrontation, for the glory of direct combat. Fabius ignored all of it. He understood something Hannibal's other opponents did not. Hannibal was a genius of engagement. His entire strategy depended on Rome doing the obvious thing, attacking, meeting him in open battle, giving him the stage where his tactical brilliance could operate. By refusing to play, Fabius removed the stage entirely. Hannibal wandered Italy for years, winning skirmishes that meant nothing, burning fields that were already scorched. His army weakened, his allies wavered, his supply chain rotted. He won every battle and lost the war, because the war was never about battles, it was about endurance. And the man who did nothing outlasted the greatest military mind of the ancient world. History eventually vindicated Fabius. Romans realized his inaction was the most aggressive strategy of all. They renamed cunctator from an insult to a title of honor. But here's the part nobody teaches you. Fabius didn't do nothing. He did the hardest thing a human being can do under pressure. He resisted the urge to act. He sat with the discomfort of appearing weak while executing a strategy that required more discipline than any charge into battle. This is the art Machiavelli encoded, the ability to recognize when action is the enemy. When doing something, anything, is just a way to soothe your anxiety rather than solve your problem. Sun Tzu wrote it plainly. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. But most people read that line, nod, and then immediately go fight, because restraint is painful. Restraint doesn't photograph well. Restraint doesn't get likes. And restraint is exactly why it works. There's a concept buried in Machiavelli's work that almost no modern reader catches. He called it economia, not economy in the financial sense, economy of motion, economy of force, the ruthless elimination of every action that doesn't serve the final objective. Think of a surgeon. A surgeon doesn't make 50 cuts when 3 will do. A surgeon doesn't swing the scalpel with passion. Every incision is measured, every movement stripped of excess. The surgery is defined not by how much was done, but by how little was necessary. Now think about your life. How many of your daily actions are surgical, and how many are just movement? Emails that didn't need sending, meetings that produced nothing, arguments you entered because your ego couldn't tolerate silence, decisions you made because you felt the pressure of appearing decisive. Cal Newport studied the work habits of the world's most productive people and found something paradoxical. They work fewer hours than their peers, not because they're lazy, because they've eliminated everything that isn't essential. They've compressed their output into focused, deliberate blocks that produce more in 4 hours than most people achieve in 12. The 48 Laws of Power describes this as Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless, but that law is usually misread as hide your work. That's the surface interpretation. The deeper reading is this: structure your life so the work itself becomes minimal. Not minimal in impact, minimal in waste. Tim Ferriss built an entire philosophy on this. The 80-20 principle applied to everything. He asked a question most people are too afraid to ask. What if 80% of what I'm doing is completely useless? When he tested it, the numbers were even worse. Closer to 95/5. 95% of his activity generated almost nothing. 5% generated almost everything. He didn't work harder. He amputated. Cut clients that consumed energy but produced no revenue. Stopped attending events that felt productive but generated zero outcomes. Automated and delegated everything that didn't require his specific judgment. His income tripled while his work hours dropped to 4 per week. This isn't a fairy tale. This is surgical economia applied to a life. But you won't do it. You know why? Because cutting feels like losing. It feels irresponsible. It feels like you're cheating. Your identity is welded to effort. You were taught that suffering is the price of success, and anyone who succeeds without visible suffering must be a fraud. That belief is the chain, and the people above you, they cut it a long time ago. Japan, late 1500s. 3 men wanted to unify a nation torn apart by a century of civil war: Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu. There's a famous Japanese riddle about them. If a bird won't sing, What do you do? Nobunaga says, kill it. He was the conqueror, brilliant, brutal, relentless. He unified Japan through sheer force, and then he was assassinated by one of his own generals. His empire crumbled overnight. Hideyoshi says, make it sing. He was the persuader, the diplomat. He rebuilt what Nobunaga started using, charm, alliances, political genius. But when he died, his dynasty barely survived him. His son was overthrown within years. Tokugawa says, wait for it to sing. And that is exactly what he did. Tokugawa Ieyasu waited for decades. While Nobunaga and Hideyoshi fought, conquered, rose and fell, Tokugawa conserved his forces, positioned himself as a loyal ally, avoided unnecessary wars, let stronger men exhaust themselves against each other. And when the dust settled, when every aggressive player had burned through their power, Tokugawa was the last one standing. Not the strongest, not the most brilliant, the most patient. He established the Tokugawa shogunate. It lasted 260 years, the longest period of peace in Japanese history, built by a man whose primary strategy was waiting. This is what Annie Duke in Thinking in Bets calls the discipline of the fold. In poker, the amateur plays every hand. They cannot tolerate inaction. They feel that folding is losing, so they bet on mediocre cards, chase bad odds, and bleed their stack dry through sheer volume of play. The professional folds again and again and again. 80% of the hands dealt, they push away, they sit, they watch, they study the other players. And when the right hand finally comes, they bet with precision the amateur never could. The amateur played more, the professional won more, because winning was never about frequency of action. It was about quality of selection. You are playing every hand, saying yes to every meeting, every project, every request, every emotional confrontation, spreading yourself across 100 mediocre commitments because saying no feels like missing out. And the person who keeps beating you, they said no 99 times and said yes once to the thing that mattered. That single yes carried the weight of 99 deliberate refusals behind it. That's why it landed like a cannon shot while your 100 yeses sounded like static. There's a pattern you'll notice once you start looking for it. The most powerful people in any organization are rarely the ones doing the most visible work. The CEO is not on the factory floor, the general is not loading rifles, the architect is not laying bricks, and yet somehow the person laying bricks believes they're more important than the architect because they're sweating. This is the great delusion of effort, the belief that physical output equals value, that being seen working is the same as producing results. It is not. It has never been. Machiavelli observed this in the courts of Italy. The advisors who ran from room to room, who carried stacks of documents, who looked perpetually overwhelmed, these men were servants. The advisor who sat quietly in a corner, who spoke only when spoken to, who delivered one sentence that redirected an entire military campaign, that man held more power than every frantic bureaucrat combined. Because power does not flow toward activity. Power flows toward decision. One decision can render 1,000 tasks irrelevant. One strategic no can save more resources than a year of optimized yeses. One well-timed absence can communicate more authority than 100 appearances. But you've been trained to fear the appearance of inactivity. You check email 40 times a day, not because anything urgent exists, but because the act of checking feels like control. You attend meetings not because they produce results, but because being absent might make you look uncommitted. You fill your schedule to the edges, not because every item matters, but because white space on a calendar triggers guilt. That guilt is manufactured. It was installed in you by a system that profits from your busyness. Corporations don't reward efficiency. They reward presence. They reward the appearance of effort. The employee who works smart and leaves at 4 is viewed with suspicion. The employee who works inefficiently but stays until 9 is viewed as dedicated. The system is not designed for your success. It's designed for your compliance. Machiavelli would tell you to see this clearly and then exploit it, not by working harder within the broken system, by stepping outside it entirely and building your own. There's a difference between passivity and coiled potential. Most people confuse them. Passivity is the man on the couch who has surrendered. He does nothing because he has given up. His stillness is decay. Coiled potential is the spring compressed to its limit. It does nothing yet, but when it releases, the energy is devastating. Its stillness is storage. The art of doing nothing is not about becoming passive. It's about becoming a loaded spring. Every moment you spend in strategic inaction, you are accumulating. Watching patterns that busy people miss, conserving energy that exhausted people have already spent, clarifying your position while distracted people are still scrambling to find theirs. There's a concept in physics called potential energy. A boulder sitting at the top of a cliff has done nothing. It has moved nowhere. It has produced no visible result, but the energy stored in its position is catastrophic. One push, and it reshapes the landscape below. Your restraint is the cliff. Your clarity is the boulder. And your moment of action, when it finally comes, will carry the accumulated force of every temptation you resisted, every distraction you refused, every impulsive move you declined to make. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote about the prince who waits for fortune to turn, not waiting passively like a leaf in the wind, waiting like a predator in tall grass, still, invisible, precise, and then one movement that changes everything. Most people fire 100 bullets into the dark and hope one hits. You wait until you can see the target clearly, then you fire once. That single shot will be worth more than their entire magazine. Here's something nobody talks about. Decision fatigue is not just tiredness. It is erosion of judgment. Every decision you make throughout a day draws from the same cognitive reservoir. What to eat, what to wear, how to respond to that text, whether to take that call. Each one feels insignificant. Each one costs something. By the afternoon, your decision-making capacity is compromised, not a little, substantially. Studies on judges found that parole decisions made in the morning were dramatically more favorable than those made in the afternoon. Same judges, same types of cases, different outcomes, because the cognitive fuel was gone. Now think about your life. You make hundreds of decisions a day, micro commitments, small yeses, tiny expenditures of judgment that leave you depleted before the moment that actually matters arrives. The person practicing the art of nothing has eliminated most of those decisions. They've designed their environment so that trivial choices are automated or removed. They've stripped their daily existence down to a small number of high-level decisions that receive the full weight of their cognitive power. This is not laziness. This is resource management at the level of the mind. Machiavelli advised princes to delegate everything that could be delegated, not because delegation was noble, because a ruler who wastes his judgment on trivialities has nothing left when the enemy arrives at the gate. Your gate has enemies approaching, and you're too tired to see them because you spent the morning arguing about font sizes in a presentation nobody will remember. Kill the trivial, protect the essential. Your clarity is a non-renewable resource. You've been told that momentum is everything, that once you start, you must never stop. That consistency is king, that any pause is a step backward. This is partially true and mostly dangerous. Momentum is valuable when it is directed. Momentum without direction is a car with no steering wheel. It moves, it feels powerful, it kills you. There are seasons where the correct move is acceleration, where the opening exists and you must charge through it before it closes. But there are also seasons where the correct move is absolute stillness. where the market is irrational, where emotions are running hot, where every voice around you is screaming, "Do something," and the only intelligent response is to do nothing. Machiavelli studied rulers who lost their thrones not through weakness, but through restlessness. Princes who could not tolerate a quiet month, who invented wars to feel relevant, who restructured their courts during periods of stability simply because stability bored them. They destroyed themselves with their own energy. The Japanese have a concept called ma. It translates roughly to negative space. The pause between notes in music, the empty room in architecture, the breath between words. Ma is not absence. It is the thing that gives everything else its shape. Without the pause, the music is noise. Without the empty space, the room is a prison. Without the breath, the words are meaningless. Your life needs ma. It needs the strategic pause, the deliberate gap, the courage to stop producing and start perceiving. Because in that gap you will see what no amount of frantic activity could ever reveal. The pattern behind the chaos, the opportunity hiding in plain sight, the move that everyone else is too busy to notice. The person who masters the pause doesn't fall behind. They see the shortcut that the runners missed. And while the runners are gasping for air at mile 20, the person who paused is already standing at the finish line, calm, unhurried, undefeated. But here's what makes this strategy so difficult to execute in the modern world. We live in an age that has weaponized your attention against you. Every notification is engineered to trigger urgency. Every email creates the illusion of importance. Every Slack message convinces you that immediate response equals productivity. And beneath all of it is a system that profits from your fragmentation. Because fragmented attention is easy to monetize, a person who can sit in stillness for 3 hours is useless to the attention economy. They're not clicking, they're not scrolling, they're not buying, but a person whose attention fractures every 90 seconds, who checks their phone 150 times a day, who feels phantom vibrations in their pocket, that person is profitable. That person can be sold to. That person will never accumulate the potential energy to escape. And this is where Machiavelli's insight becomes almost unbearably relevant to your life right now. He observed that the princes who maintained power were not the ones who responded to every provocation. They were the ones who understood which provocations mattered and which were designed to drain their resources. In Renaissance Italy, rival city-states would manufacture conflicts specifically to exhaust their enemies. They would stage border incidents, spread inflammatory rumors, create the appearance of threat where none existed. The goal was simple: make your opponent waste their energy chasing ghosts while you position yourself for the real strike. Your inbox is doing this to you right now. Your social media feed is doing this to you right now. The 24-hour news cycle is doing this to you right now. Every urgent request, every manufactured crisis, every notification engineered to spike your cortisol, these are border incidents designed to fragment your attention and exhaust your decision-making capacity before the moment that actually determines your future arrives. And the people who understand this, the ones who have built their lives around strategic inaction, they've done something radical. They've created what I call decision moats, layers of protection around their cognitive resources that prevent the trivial from ever reaching them. Warren Buffett has a rule: he will not take a meeting unless the person requesting it can prove in one paragraph why it's worth his time. Not one page, one paragraph. That single filter eliminates 95% of meeting requests before they ever reach his calendar. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day for the last decade of his life. Not because he couldn't afford variety, because deciding what to wear was a decision, and decisions are expensive. Every morning he saved a decision meant every morning he had more cognitive fuel for the one question that mattered. What should Apple build next? When asked about this, he said something that most people dismissed as eccentric. I have too many important decisions to make to waste energy on trivial ones. But here's what separates the people who merely understand this concept from the people who actually implement it. Implementation requires you to violate every social norm you've been trained to follow. It requires you to be the person who doesn't respond to the email, who doesn't attend the meeting, who says no without explanation. And that social cost is so psychologically expensive that most people would rather burn their cognitive resources than pay it. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Strategic inaction makes you look like an asshole. When everyone around you is drowning in motion and you're sitting still, their instinct is not to admire your discipline. Their instinct is to resent your calm, to interpret your restraint as arrogance, to mistake your clarity for indifference. And that social pressure, that ambient resentment from people who are trapped in the busyness trap, is enough to pull most people back into the chaos. This is why Fabius was called cunctator, as an insult. This is why Tokugawa's rivals mocked him as passive while they destroyed each other. This is why your co-workers will question your commitment when you leave at 5 p.m., having accomplished more than they did working until midnight. The social punishment for strategic inaction is severe. And most people's need for social approval is stronger than their desire for actual results. But here's where the game gets interesting, because the people who can withstand that social pressure, who can tolerate being misunderstood while they execute a strategy that requires years to pay off, those people don't just win. They win so completely that the rules of the game change around them. Consider Jeff Bezos and his famous Day One philosophy at Amazon. For decades, analysts and competitors mocked Amazon for not prioritizing short-term profits. Quarter after quarter, Bezos would spend every dollar of revenue on infrastructure, logistics, and technology, while competitors extracted maximum profit and rewarded shareholders. Wall Street called him reckless, competitors called him unsustainable. And the entire time, Bezos was playing a different game entirely. He wasn't optimizing for quarterly earnings. He was building a logistics network so sophisticated that by the time competitors realized what he'd done, replicating it would require 20 years and hundreds of billions of dollars. He practiced strategic inaction on short-term profit extraction while executing strategic action on long-term infrastructure building. And now Amazon doesn't just dominate e-commerce. They've made it nearly impossible for anyone else to compete at their level. This is the end game of Machiavellian restraint. You don't just win the current game, you change the game itself so that your strategic position becomes unassailable. But getting there requires something most people don't have, the ability to be misunderstood for years while you build something that won't make sense to anyone until it's finished. And this brings us to the most dangerous misconception about the art of doing nothing. People hear strategic inaction and think it means doing less. It doesn't. It means doing different. It means shifting your energy from the visible to the invisible, from the urgent to the important, from the motion that impresses others to the progress that compounds in silence. When Fabius was shadowing Hannibal across Italy, he wasn't doing nothing. He was doing everything that mattered, gathering intelligence, studying Hannibal's patterns, understanding his supply lines, training his forces, building alliances with cities that Hannibal would need. Every day that looked like inaction to Rome was actually preparation. And when the moment finally came, when Hannibal's army was weak enough and Rome's position was strong enough, Fabius had built such an overwhelming advantage that the outcome was inevitable. This is the pattern you need to internalize. Strategic inaction is not the absence of work. It's the concentration of work into the dimensions that others can't see. While everyone else is optimizing their LinkedIn profile, you're building actual skills. While everyone else is networking at conferences, you're studying the mechanics of your industry until you understand it better than people who've been in it for 20 years. While everyone else is consuming content, you're creating systems that generate asymmetric returns. And here's the part that nobody tells you. This is lonely. Unbelievably lonely. Because the work that compounds is invisible. The decisions that matter happen in private. The breakthroughs occur in the gaps between the performances, and during all of that invisible work, all that strategic inaction, you will have nothing to show people who ask what you've been doing. You can't post "spent 4 hours thinking about my business model" on Instagram. You can't turn "said no to 47 opportunities so I could focus on one" into a LinkedIn humble brag. You can't photograph the moment you realize that everything you've been doing for the past 6 months was wrong and you need to start over. The work that actually changes your life is not the work that gets witnessed. And most people need their work to be witnessed more than they need their work to be effective. This is the final filter. The people who master the art of doing nothing are the people who can tolerate being unseen while they build, who can handle their parents asking, "So what have you been up to?" and having no impressive answer, who can sit through dinner parties where everyone is bragging about their 80-hour weeks and not feel the need to prove they're working hard too, because they're not working hard, they're working precisely, and precision is invisible until it produces a result so undeniable that suddenly everyone wants to know how you did it. And the answer, the one you can't really give them because they won't believe it, is that you did it by not doing most of what they spent their energy doing. So what does all of this mean for you right now, tonight, tomorrow morning? It means you need to conduct an audit of your life with surgical honesty. Look at your calendar. How many items on it will matter in 6 months? Be honest. Most of them are rituals of perceived productivity, meetings that produce minutes but no outcomes, tasks that make you feel dutiful but move nothing forward, social obligations that drain you but you attend because guilt is a cheaper feeling than confrontation. Cut them, not gradually, now. Look at your commitments. How many did you say yes to because you were afraid that no would make you look lazy, uncommitted, or difficult? Every one of those yeses is a leak in your power. Every one of them is diluting the force you could bring to the one thing that actually matters. Find the one thing. The single lever that, if pulled with full force, would render most of your other activities unnecessary. It exists. You probably already know what it is. You've been avoiding it because it's harder than busy work. It requires thought. It requires courage. It requires the terrifying admission that most of what you've been doing was theatre. Then do that one thing. Not with more hours, with more depth, with the full, undivided weight of a mind that is no longer bleeding energy in 40 directions. Machiavelli did not write The Prince for busy people. He wrote it for effective people. And effectiveness has never been measured by sweat. It is measured by outcome per unit of effort. The prince who achieves peace through one strategic marriage is more powerful than the prince who achieves it through 10 years of war. The cost is lower. The result is identical. The difference is intelligence. You have been fighting 10-year wars that could have been settled with one conversation you were too proud to have. You have been grinding through problems that could have been dissolved with one decision you were too scared to make. You have been filling your days with motion because stillness forced you to confront a question you didn't want to answer. Am I busy or am I effective? Sit with that. It will burn. Let it. Because on the other side of that burn is a version of you that works less, produces more, and moves through the world with a calm that unsettles every hustler in the room. A version of you that people cannot figure out. How does he have so much time? How is he so calm? How does he keep winning while everyone else is drowning? The answer is elegant and brutal. He stopped doing what didn't matter, and he had the nerve to do it before anyone gave him permission. That is the art Machiavelli encoded. That is what Fabius practiced in the hills above Hannibal's army. That is what Tokugawa understood while 2 empires burned around him. That is what every surgeon, every grandmaster, every apex strategist knows in their bones. The win is not in the swing. It is in the selection of when to swing. Everything else is wasted motion dressed up as ambition. Kill the waste, sharpen the blade, and when you finally move, move once, move precisely, and let the world wonder how you made it look so easy. Because that is the final secret. The effort was never supposed to be visible. The effort was supposed to disappear inside the result. And when it does, they won't call you lazy, they will call you inevitable.